don't get jump scared, okay? I know this video is an hour long. I promise you it does not take me 1 hour to explain the build. What this video is about 10 minutes of me explaining the build, about 20 minutes of me going through all the progression and, you know, the scaling, and maybe when you should buy into the build, when you should swap if you're a different build. And then the final 30 minutes of the video will be me going over every single craft for the item, okay? So don't get jump scared. This is how I did the last video, and you can see by, like, the replay bar that having them all in one place was, like, really appreciated. I got a lot of feedback that people like this, so I'm going to do it again this time. So the entire back half of this video is crafting. I promise you I don't yap for 1 hour about how Zenith works, okay? But be honest here. You already clicked on a 1 hour long Path of Exile video. That means you're a psychopath, which means you are my target audience. Understand that. Hello, this is One Mana Left, and today we have the 327 Molten Strike of the Zenith Guide. So, I first played this build as kind of my flagship build in 325. Was amazing, was on like its own power level. 326, they came in, they did like a 33% nerf, and it was still one of the strongest builds in 326. I didn't play it because I had some Templar plans. I'm not sure yet for 327. I'm leaning Templar, but I haven't fixed what I'm trying to make for Templar yet, so I'm not sure yet. I could go this still. But in 326, this was still like amongst the strongest builds in a league where 90% of builds were lightning damage. And they had a free Doriani's Merc that made them deal like 6 times as much damage. So in a league where 90% of other builds got 6 times damage, this Chaos build was still amongst the strongest builds. So I'm going to just get right into some gameplay because that's what people like to see. And I'm going to start off doing a risk map. Let's just do 5 risk scarabs and pour one out for the homies because this is going away next league. But I should have it on the right atlas, right? This isn't a real atlas. I just made it for the max map mod effect. But I'll get into some gameplay and kind of talk about how it works. So, this build is pretty fast because I have a lot of leap slam speed. My filter's probably not correct right now. It's probably a fake filter. But I pretty much have like a 4.5 meter strike range with 7 strike targets, so I still gotta go pretty fast. So even though we have some pretty high tuned content here, I have a 0.19 second leap slam because I'm stacking strength and therefore attack speed as a Juggernaut. And I have a skill that does some funny damage every 5th hit, which the way you get around the clunkiness of it only doing giga damage like times 20 every 5 hits is you get a lot of attack speed. Because if you attack once per second, then it's going to feel really bad if you only do a Zenith proc every 5 seconds. But if you attack 11 times per second, it doesn't feel so bad. So that's why I have a lot of attack speed. That's why I'm a Juggernaut. And it does get okay clear. There are builds that have better like raw clear than this, like some Wander builds and stuff. Because they don't have to wait like the half second it takes for the projectiles to drop. Well, that's the whole map, but I didn't find the boss because I'm blind and I'm trying to talk and easily distracted. But let's go back and find the boss and show off some damage. But despite not being like a premier clear speed skill, I still got some pretty good map times with this, just on the back of, you know, insane leap slam speed and like pretty much full screen AoE. Oh, there it is, I see it. But the reason this build is like, you know, one of the strongest endgame builds is because it does a lot of damage. Let's see this boss. I don't even know what mods it has. It has monster life. He's gonna die when I Zenith. See? So, I don't... Wait, what just hit me for like 35%? What is hitting me? Hello? Anyways, so, I don't know. That's a monster life fortress boss. I don't even... Whatever we got here. Anyways. So, this is an okay mapper, but it has just an unreal level of damage and tankiness because of the way I'm scaling the build. So, the skill gem is Molten Strike of the Zenith. As I described earlier, every 5th hit, does, in this case, 830% more damage. So times 9.3 with +5 projectiles. So like approximately double. So roughly every 5th hit does 20 times damage. And to remove the clunkiness, we are a Juggernaut. So, undeniable is what's giving me a lot of attack speed here, and I'm stacking strength with replica Alberons. So, what you're going to find out here is strength is doing a lot of heavy lifting in this build, because it's scaling me like 4 different ways. The first is obviously flat chaos damage. You get more strength, you get more flat chaos damage. The second, you get more strength, you get more accuracy, therefore you get more attack speed. And more attack speed makes both the leap slam feel better, and it makes the actual frequency of Zenith hits feel better. The next thing is I'm using Iron Will. This is a pretty common piece of like strength stack tech, but I'm using Iron Will and then Crown of Eyes to turn all my strength, all 3,000, into whatever, like 1,800% attack damage. You can use an Iron Fortress to make that multiplier 1.5 times higher. That's a good like early and mid game chest. For super end game though, you get more max hit from a rare chest, so that's why I swapped there. I'm doing, a split personality path. You can see here in yellow over here, and I'm getting endurance charges because endurance charges are incredibly powerful when you have 50% Ellie and Fizz reduction from having 10 of them, and that makes it really good defense. In the 327 patch notes, we've had a few changes. Not many, actually. There weren't really many like meta-breaking patch notes, but a couple of them is suppression got nerfed from 50% to 40. This character does not use any suppression. Whispers of Infinity got nerfed. Everyone else lost their Doriani's Mercenary. So it's kind of been a league where this was already strong, and a lot of other builds took a step back, and this build didn't move, so it kind of maybe will look like in 327 it took a step forward. But, I need to get rid of this stupid message. But that's the gist of it. Not a whole lot has changed from the 326 tree. I will go over in a little bit some new items that they've teased that you can use, like they've already teased the new Red Dream, where you can get % life, and depending on the setup, this can be, if you take these 2 points, this can be 53%. But, so, I'll go over more about the trees and everything later. But, we'll do a few more demonstrations here, just to, give you guys a feel for what I mean. If you've been watching the video so far and you think, oh, this skill doesn't look very good, like, I saw a KB build clear faster than this. I saw like a Righteous Fire Chieftain with Explode clear faster than this. The thing you gotta understand is, if you just took a multiplier on the monster life of times 100, all those builds would look like, they'd look like PoE 2. If you just 100 times the HP of every monster in that fortress map. Every other build I just said that looks like it has good clear speed would suddenly look like they're playing PoE 2. And this build, unless you told me that you 100 times the health, outside of the boss, I don't think I'd be able to tell. But the damage is good.
Defiance ends here, hatchling.
This is an Uber Exarch. And I'm going to do some Delve demos that have a lot more HP than this, but the build does a lot of damage. Okay. Okay, really? Really? I'm going to miss an Exarch phase for my demo video? Are you serious? Alright, well, it's over, boys. Pack it up. It's over. Am I? What? Something. Okay, well, shit. We messed up. This is what you get for doing it live. Alright, I'll redeem myself here. I'll redeem myself. I gotta do a big Delve demo. But okay. As far as the mechanics, it's pretty straightforward. You're gonna stack strength, you're getting a lot of attack speed, and you're just gonna scale everything off that strength stacking. That's really it. That part hasn't really changed much from 325 or 326. But I'm going to go over some of the other mechanics in the build that maybe I didn't like reiterate enough in the previous videos, and just kind of go over the way some things work. So let's look here. The first thing I'm actually going to say is we did get bloodline ascendancies all leaked or teased, whatever, today. I don't think I'm going to take any of these. Hot take, I think most builds probably shouldn't. They're kind of weak. They're very underwhelming. There's going to be a couple builds that have a good 2-pointer. But Jug was already an ascendancy that had 8 really good points, arguably 10, arguably 12. So it's really hard to justify taking any of these. These are maybe more so for ascendancies that had only like 4 good points or 6 good points, but Jug was not one of those. That's why it was strong. So if before people ask about bloodlines, I currently am not planning on taking one. We've seen 9 of the 10. We have not seen the breach one, but I wouldn't hold my breath. If it's broken, sweet, awesome. But out of seeing 9 out of 10, none of them look worth taking for now. So for the time being, I'm just going to plan on taking the same 8 points as always. But the next thing I want to talk about is the defense of the build. I'm going to address a couple points that I got a lot of feedback on in 326 from people. And it's 2 of the defensive points. We'll talk more about like the different investment and scaling. I have all the POBs ready here. So we'll look at the different POBs, later, and look at roughly where the defense is coming from, where the upgrades are. But I frequently got questions from people on how hey, the build feels squishy, and I always was weirded out by that. I'm like, really? Because I played this twice, most recently in Pox League in May, and at no point did it feel squishy. So I always got weirded out by people asking that. And I've had people in my chat that have played the build 2 or 3 times, and they've said the same thing. They're like, yeah, I don't know what they're talking about. It was never squishy. But I asked enough people and started to look at their POBs when they said that, and I think I pinned down one of these common points of people saying hey, Zenith felt not tanky, and I think it comes down to the chaos swap. So when you're progressing through the build, you are starting off with maybe either you're rerolling into this or you're starting off like Ellie. But you basically start off with either another build or the fire stat chaos setup. And your DPS is kind of mid. And then you upgrade into the chaos swap. And suddenly your damage 4 times. Because now you have a Chaos Sword, and you have Replica Alberons. The thing is, at this point in time, you did not gain any defense. And all your next upgrades are all defense. So, you just quadrupled your damage. You've been fighting content and getting a sense for how the gameplay feels. But you then get your Chaos Swap, and you immediately feel like you have to do harder content. So you do. You start turning up the dial on difficulty into more and more juice 17s because you do have enough damage for that now. You can kill Ubers in 2 or 3 Zeniths. You have the damage. You should just go into the hard content, right? Well, here's the thing. Because you didn't increase your defense at all with that swap, that's the point in time where it's going to feel glassy. And every single person I asked and actually prodded deeper and told them to link their POB, it was always the same. The people that said it was glassy, they swapped Chaos, they had Alberons and a Chaos Sword, and they had none of the further upgrades to defense. And they had enough damage to do all this content, but their defense didn't really match. And sometimes just being aware of that is half the victory. But I'm going to go over 3 ways to maybe help that. So the first is, it's a lot of small things that people skip over, but they do add up. Flasks matter a lot. A lot of people just don't even really pay attention to flasks. They just treat them as whatever. But if you actually make sure that all your flasks have like gain 2 charge on hit, and you're running like triple Ellie for max res, you know, you run a ruby, topaz, and sapphire, and they all have gain charge on hit with an enkindling orb to use charges when full, and they all have like a useful secondary, like, you know, curse reduction, shock reduction, regen, armor. Like, if you actually have that, you will have 100% uptime with them as a jug. That is a big defensive help right there that a lot of these people that had defensive problems were skipping. There's also pantheons. I've frequently had people, when I asked what their pantheons were, that they just said they weren't using a pantheon. Like, they forgot. Like, I know they're not the biggest thing defensively, but they kind of do add up. Like this pantheon right here, if you had a mercenary this league, you were maybe getting chained off of. You've been hit recently if you're in combat. That's 6% DR. 10% chance to just avoid projectiles. So if you're getting shotgunned by like some abomination boss that's just 10% less damage taken. And then 8 PDR. And then you have your minor. Like, all this stuff adds up. It's not necessarily one single thing that's going to make you like night and day difference tankier. But it's like, it's these things that make you 3% tankier. And there's like 20 of them. And if you skip all 20 versus the guy who actually like does all 20, that guy will be 60% tankier than you. There's no one silver bullet at this point without like upping the budget. But just doing this small stuff correctly with flasks and pantheons, like, it does matter. And just being aware that, hey, I just quadrupled my damage, but I didn't up my defense yet. Because the next things you're going to get is you are going to up your defense quite a bit. Because, like, this is roughly the POB I have for the fresh chaos swap. But if you look at the bigger budget POB after this, like, the max hit is in another planet. The reason is because all these next upgrades you've grabbed are all defensive. Like, you gained another 2,500 life. You added Progenesis. You now have like 90 max res because maybe you got Velaco, or maybe you did go mageblood with triple LA flask for the extra flask effect, and then you took like the double max res nodes instead of doing Velaco. That's also an option. But, like, going from 80 to 90 max res on a class that basically doesn't take phys damage and really only takes elemental damage, that's a big deal. Some people in really, really poor gear have, like, 10 chaos res. Like, their rings don't have chaos res. They just have, like, the bare bones. They've basically just got 10 chaos res or something. And since you're a class that basically doesn't take phys damage, if you are getting like triple LA Flask or Velaco for max res, now you're doing really good against elemental damage with endurance charges. Some people have almost no chaos res, and it's kind of a budget thing, it's kind of a gear thing, but if you craft rings correctly, this should fix you. The difference between 10 chaos res and 75 is like 4 times the chaos EHP. So it's just things like this that people skip out on that make them feel really glassy, because they are. That if you do all this correctly, you will not feel glassy. Like, get your max res, get your chaos res, get your pantheons, get your flash set up. But you will just budget into more defense. And then, like, the other thing is chest swap. The Iron Fortress is going to feel, it is more damage. It's like 40% more damage than a rare chest. But you get so much max hit from the strength stack reduction mod. And you can get crit immunity, which if you're doing, like, juice 17s, even though they're less juice this league, like, the biggest T17 mod can be, like, 170 crit multi. So getting the endurance stack mod for the crit reduction, the 10% reduced extra per endurance charge, on like, a 17 with powerful crits, this makes you twice as tanky. Like, that's why, this is some of the hard carry of the rare chest. 8 PDR is fantastic. Like, basically, after the Chaos swap, all your next upgrades, for the most part, besides, like, Nimbus, are going to be mostly defensively oriented. And all the people that told me they had defense problems were in that early post-Chaos res swap, Chaos sword swap. And the people that progressed out of that toward, like, Velaco and, like, Progenesis, they were not struggling. The third and final point is recovery, because a couple people I asked the issue wasn't max hit. Like, usually when I look at how tanky a build is, I'm looking at max hit. Because that's usually what matters if you're doing incredibly hard content that has the ability to one-shot you, it's max hit. And if a build has really, really, really good recovery, then max hit's really the only thing that matters. But some people brick their recovery, and so they weren't really getting one-shot, they were just getting whittled down slowly in 17s. There's some things you can't really help, like if you click the endurance charge altar from Eater of Worlds in a risk 17. But just getting a source of like life recovery on hit, like in this case I had the mirror ring, but it can be coming over here and taking the instant leech on some of the lower POBs. I have that. So it can be instant leech. It can be a Vitality Watcher's Eye. It can be a Hunter Prefix ring. It could technically be a Synth ring, but that's like the least economic option. But if you don't have like a good recovery setup where you are getting life on hit, be it instant leech or life on hit directly, you will feel glassy just because you have no recovery. It is a night and day difference when you recover your entire HP pool every fraction of a second in this game versus just getting basically only 20% life leech and, you know, dying to just attrition. The other thing I will talk about is something that people always ask me that they don't really understand about the defense, and that's Divine Shield. I've even had people link me where they took Divine Shield out. They were saying they were feeling glassy, and they unspec Divine Shield. And I asked about that. I'm like, oh my god, what are you doing? Why would you take out Divine Shield? And they're like, well, I'm running Blood Rage. And I have to explain to them every time, because they think that Blood Rage cancels out Divine Shield. No, that is not how it works. I will demonstrate to you right now why that is not how it works. This is the reason you use Warlock Gloves. This is the reason you use Sacred Chainmail. This is the reason I have 2,500 Energy Shield. Because this is the most broken defense in the game. And they'll say, no, it's not, because I do mapping and I never have an Energy Shield. This is where the misconception comes from. No, you have no Energy Shield thanks to Blood Rage because you're killing everything and you're not taking damage. If you aren't getting hits, Divine Shield is not doing anything. Therefore, you'll always be out of Energy Shield because of Blood Rage, okay? But here's the thing. Do I have Blood Rage on my bars even? Yeah, we'll put it on my bars. Here's the thing. A defense that's not up when you're not taking damage, but is up when you are taking damage, is the best defense in the game. Because I promise you, if you are getting absolutely ass-reamed, this Divine Shield is going to be earning its salary, okay? Because my Blood Rage is degenning me for 4% of 11k, so 440, and then I have like 70 PDR. So this Blood Rage is degenning me like 150 per second. If you are actually getting in hard content and taking damage, 170 degen per second is nothing. It is absolutely nothing. I'm going to show you this right now. If you are in actual combat where you are actually taking damage, this could be a 17, this could be Simulacrum. Once you're in a position to take damage, that 150 degen will not matter, and that Divine Shield is going to put you on its back and carry. This is depth 6,000. This is the bottom of Delve. It does not scale past 6,000. I'm going to show you what Divine Shield looks like at 6,000 depth. And you tell me if you think that Blood Rage is doing anything. Currently, I have 25,000, 38,000, 55,000, 70,000, 70,000 energy shield per second. 76,000. So that's like the upper limit. Okay? This is the deepest, hardest content in the game. This is 6k delve. And if I let the entire delve surround me, Divine Shield alone is keeping me alive with 76,000 regen. Okay? So that's why Divine Shield is OP. Is because it scales with the content. The harder the content hits, the more regen you get. The less the content hits, the less regen you get. That's perfect. It's not up when you don't need it. The more you need it, the more it's up. So, yes, don't get faked out by Blood Rage and think this isn't doing anything. If you get up to like 17s or like Simulacrum, Divine Shield is paying rent, I promise you. Alright. As far as League start, the way I like to play the game is I like to start with the whole build the entire way. I don't like to do a reroll if I don't have to. I like the like 0 to hero mentality of progressing a build from its weakest point to its strongest point and getting to feel the progression the whole way. So whenever I play Zenith, I always start off Zenith right like as soon as possible. I go through the campaign as like basically right when I get the Sunder gem, I go Sunder, and then I just play Sunder the whole way because Sunder's fine. And then right around when I can buy like a decent DPS Ellie sword, like a Reaver sword, because 60% accuracy is really good, immediately I switch Zenith. That does not mean that is the correct way to do it, okay? If you are someone who is trying to only play the game as optimally as possible, also I just realized I have an extra rage on hit there. If you are someone who's trying to only play the game as optimally as possible and just full min-max, that is probably not even the correct way to play Zenith, is to start right away. It is most likely better to start something else and reroll later. That is fine. So if you are league starting something completely else, that is most likely the optimal way to do it, honestly. You can do, Earth Shatter, you can do Berserker Slams. A lot of people last league in 326 started Berserker Snaking, and then they kind of got to the ceiling of like, oh, I can't make the build any stronger. I'm like 2 mirrors in, and I'm still dying in 17s, and I have like 50 mil DPS. A lot of people like that rerolled into Zenith. They came in with money, and they immediately started off at like the 500 div POB, and they got to skip all that early struggle. That is fine. Some people I know are going to play Righteous Fire Chieftain, because that's a comfy league start. They're going to put their faith in Pox, and then they're going to farm like 40 div and then swap Zenith later. That is also fine. These are good options. None of them are wrong. I'm just saying I like to play it this way, and the optimal way is to probably reroll in the like 30 to 120 div ballpark. Or if you really like your league starter, maybe like 500. But I'm not someone who's known for making league starter builds. I let people who focus more on that and min-max that do that. I make endgame builds. So that is what this is. Play whatever you want. You can reroll into this later. That is absolutely fine. I'm going to go through the progression anyways, though, of the different gear and maybe what to expect around this. So this is the first POB I have. It's 3 to 5 divines. And it's basically just like I said, I got a crappy sword. And it was a Reaver sword. I crafted attack speed. It had like T4, T5, T7 flat damage or something garbage. And then I crafted attack speed and it was like 882 DPS. My bad. That's actually not that bad. And then I played Zenith. Crown of Eyes is like 4 chaos on league start. And then just a bunch of garbage rares. Like look at my amulet. Look at this. This is a 1 chaos enchant. No, you don't even know what excess sustenance does. Don't lie. Don't look it up right now. What does excess sustenance do? You don't know. You've never even heard of this. I could have made this up. I have like T3 life, T2 all attributes, and then I crafted strength int. Like, this is the absolute bottom of the dumpster. On this setup, you're good clearing T16 maps. You're probably not strong enough to do like Guardians. Because I like to pivot into doing Destructive Play Guardian Delirium. Because I do that every league. It's fun. You get a Mirror of Delirium at the start. You do a Minotaur map. He summons 3 boss friends, and you fight them all at once. That's what I like to league start farm. On this budget, you're going to be doing fine in that content. This is a little more okay. This is 8 mil per strike target. So if you got the Minotaur and 3 friends, you'll do 4 Zeniths. But in this setup, I'm not Chaos Swap yet. I've got Iron Fortress now, because these are like maybe a div on League Start, depends. And then I have an Awakener Orb Sword. I took the Endurance Charge on Melee Stun and the Strength Stack mod, Awakener Orb, and then I crafted Attack Speed. And I'm starting to get a good amount of strength. Like, I don't have a lot of the key pieces, but I'm already up to 1700. And at 1700 strength, the Strength Stack mod at 4 per is already giving you like 700 flat fire, which at 1.8 APS is already like 1200 DPS just from that one mod. So this is starting to get pretty good. Around this time, you could use Rakiatas. Rakiatas is a good sword. I'll just say this. If Rakiatas cost similar to the Awakener Orb, plus like 2 Donor Swords, then just go Rakiatas, because it's fine, and it saves you the crafting. But if Rakiatas is like 2 times the price of just Awakener Orbing this sword, I would just Awakener Orb this sword. So it is a tier 0. So sometimes it does get bought up pretty good if people are real gung-ho about a build with it. So sometimes it could be like 15 div. But if it's like 4 div, it's probably worth buying for this. I wouldn't go over like 6 or 7. But it's a good option for this level of gear. But yeah, on this POB, I'm doing Destructive Play, Delirium, Guardian map farming. I'm doing Elder maps, Shaper maps, Elder Slayer maps, with, 150 Simulacrum Splinters dropping every map. This is maybe on the edge of being strong enough to farm Simulacrum, but it's close. The next budget point, this is where I would say most people want to swap Zenith, but this is kind of what I talked about earlier, where you have good damage now, but your defense hasn't caught up yet. But for most people looking to reroll into Zenith, I would reroll at this point. Because this is Replica Alberons now. So the price on these can be pretty variable. In 325, Zenith got a lot of hype because they like teased this sword enchant right before League Start. So a lot of people play Zenith in 325, and they, just buffed it crazily, and, they before the 326 33% nerf. So in 325, these were 35 divines when I bought them. Last league, they were 4 divines. This league, I think they'll be 10 to 20. I think it won't be nearly as many people playing as 325, but I think it will be more than last league. Some other builds have gotten nerfed. So relatively, Zenith looks more appealing now. So I don't know. I'm not psychic, but I'm going to predict these are in the 10 to 20 ballpark. Maybe they'll be cheaper with the heist rework if people are, able to run heist easier on League Start with all their rogues level 5, maybe. But basically, you're going to do a Chaos Sword, which is kind of the same thing, but it's instead of the Fire Stack mod, it's the 20% more attack mod with Endurance Charge or Melee Stun. Then you can just reforge Chaos, craft attack speed, whatever. I'll go over that craft later. And this setup, post-Chaos Swap, is going to be able to kill Ubers very fast and strong enough to do T17s. But if you do really, really, really juice 17s before you get all the defensive upgrades, you may feel glassy in this setup. But all the next upgrades are defense. I have the 500 DPOB now. This is where you get all the defense. Because remember, now you have 89 all-res with Valaco. Now you have Progenesis. Now you have 10k life with 2200 strength. Now you have a rare chest instead of a Iron Fortress. And rare chest gives you a lot of defense. This is starting to get tanky. This POB just beats the entire game. The only thing that's out of reach for this POB is maybe 6k delve, although this would be fine at like 3k probably. And then like the hardest of hard Valdos maps, like Ghost of Delirious Feared. Just like regular Feared Valdos maps, this would shit on. It'd kill them in 1 second and like take no damage. But like quad Ghost Delirious would maybe still beat this. But another thing you'll notice about this POB and the next POB is I'm not using Mageblood. There's a reason for that. Mageblood's obviously like the go-to belt for pretty much every build in the game. But there's really 2 or 3 reasons people use Mageblood. And none of them really apply to Jug, so I don't like to use Mageblood. You still can, and just triple LA Flask and don't use Valaco, that's an option. But the reason I don't use Mageblood is, number 1, most people run Mageblood for movement speed. Let's say you're playing a bow character, you're running around shooting. Well, guess what? You're a bow character, which means you're a 3rd class citizen. who GGG said at the dawn of time, you have to run everywhere. You are not allowed to leap and teleport like the other two archetypes. You have to run. Well, then a belt that gives you 150 move speed suddenly is pretty good. So, this build doesn't run. He jumps. And I have a lot of attack speed. So, I move on this character at what is equivalent to like 600 or 700 move speed just from Leap Slam. So I don't benefit from the Mageblood Quicksilver at all. The second thing people use Quicksilver or use Mageblood for is fixing a lot of the like check marks that their build needs to check, like freeze, chill, stun, curse for temp chains, and like you're unstoppable. You don't really care about that stuff. So a lot of the things that like most builds need to solve, Unstoppable already solves like 2/3 of them. And then the last thing is, this build actually has some really good unique flasks. While most builds that are life-based would run a Progenesis and then 4 magic flasks, this build actually has some really, really good rare, unique flasks. Obviously Progenesis. Replica Roomies is really, really good for this build, because the flask is balanced around it having a 0.5 second duration, but you can use the Enkindling Orb to make it an 8 second duration, which is really funny. You can't use it to use on full, you have to manually use this, but it's just a flask that gives you 50 block and 30 spell block, plus it's a granite flask with an 8 second duration, and then the major downside is it petrifies you, which doesn't apply to Unstoppable, so this is insane for Jug. And it gives you endurance charge on use, which can proc your auto gain to full endurance charge from your ascendancy. So if you're entering a new zone in like Delve and you're worried about getting gimped when you have no endurance charges, this can solve that. Sin's Rebirth is really strong because you're Chaos. Even if you're not Original Sin, just from Alberons, you're Chaos damage only. So Sin's Rebirth gives you Unholy Might, which Unholy Might applies Wither on hit. And this skill does so many hits that if you attack a target for like a quarter second, you're already going to be at 15 Wither. So Unholy Might is just 90% more damage. And then you could Dying Sun. This is maybe the more maybe flask. You could just replace this with like a Ruby flask instead with like gain 3 charge on hit. So this is questionable, but if you're just like chilling in the end game and you're just like memeing on content, then whatever. This is fun because 2 more Proj and AoE whatever. But that's why I don't go Mageblood. And, you know, pivoting into the Planet Eater POB, we're still not Mageblood. I'm about 600 mil DPS per strike target, so for like Giga Valdos and Delve, if I have, you know, 7 strike targets, that's pretty good. Scions is a really good anoint. I don't know if I have it on this amulet. I have Force of Darkness. If you're ever struggling on damage at all, Force of Darkness is the answer. But when you have a shit ton of damage to the point where you're just killing everything in one hit, Scions is really busted because it just gives you 40% more strike range. So it'll turn a 3 meter strike range into like 4.5. And it doesn't even matter if it's single target. Like I when I first read this, misinterpreted it, and I thought it only meant your other ones, like not your primary one. Doesn't matter at all. If on a pure single target, you can attack from 4 meters away with this. So this is like really giga quality of life endgame if you get good damage. But as far as what's changed from 326, if you either played it last league or watched the last video, or maybe you're just coming in fresh, there are a couple different things in 327. Some of them were added in 326, but we didn't know about them until after my 326 video. So there's a couple new added pieces of power. The first is Bound by Destiny. You only care about the 2 mod, so don't care about the 4 and 6 at all. 15% strength if 2 Warlord items are equipped. Well, if you get up to a Simplex amulet, this is Warlord Shaper anyways. So then the other spot you can get a Warlord is you can get a Crown of Eyes with Warlord. Or on like lower budget, you can just get a ring with Warlord. Like this cogwork ring, if I was going to craft it, I'll go over this later when I go over the craft. I would just blind slam Warlord before crafting it, and then just craft it normally, just to ensure that I have a Warlord ring, so that I have 2 with the amulet. Or you could Calander's Touch this, and if you're not using like Nimbus by that point, if Bound by Destiny is cheap enough that you can get it before Nimbus, you can just make a cogwork with Warlord, Calandra's touch it, and get 15% strength. So that's the new 326 tech. They are adding this variation. We haven't seen all the new like foulborn uniques, but this is one of them they teased already. The foulborn Red Dream gives you 1% life per fire or all res in the radius. If you use it in this spot, take these 3 nodes and then change these 4 from strength to fire res. I know you're a strength stacker, but like 1%, 6% life is stronger than 10 strength. You can get a lot of life. Like, that's how this character has 10k life already. If I take this off, I have 8.5k. It's 1500 life from that jewel. And then I'm using this to fix a little bit of res, because this is 15% life for 2 points. But then it's 20 all res as well. So it's like, you know, kind of a valuable 2 points. If you're already using a Lyra, it's already like 1.33 Aliras, and that's 15% life. So like, this is just one of the new uniques they've shown that automatically is good for Zenith. There may be more. There may be a foulborn Crown of Eyes. We don't know yet. But just as far as what we know right now, that's a new piece of tech you can add in. We'll go over the simplex craft maybe briefly later, but the only like nerf I think the build has seen the entire time is technically it's a little bit harder to craft simplexes now. It doesn't change the power level of the build at all, but it's like ever so slightly harder to craft simplexes now, and it's probably correct to just mirror them instead of paying 0.8 mirrors, because the strength one's way more cursed than the int one. But I think there's 2 more things to go over before the crafting. Lethal pride combinations. This is pretty straightforward, but someone asked me to go over this. The top mod is % strength. The next mod is either going to be double damage or 20 flat strength. Getting 1 single point with Intimidate on hit is really good, because that's like 6% more damage on average, or like 5, even with Wither. So you can get up to 1 Intimidate on hit, and that's really good. You can get up to 1 Rage on hit, and that's also really good, because it saves you 1 talent point. The rest, you just want % strength, flat strength, or double damage. Percent's better. 20 strength is not that far behind. 5% double damage is just obviously 5% more damage. If you have the sword craft for focus double damage, it's a little bit less because of diminishing returns. It ends up being only like 4% more damage. And then, like, you know, % life and stuff is just generically more good. Fortify is just like okay. Fire res is okay. Those are like the not dead, but like not best in slot modifiers. So if you're looking for lethal prides, I recommend just doing a weighted sum on the PoE like timeless jewel calc. And I usually put a weighting of like 1.2 on strength %, like 0.9 on flat strength, like 1 on double damage. Then I put like a 1 weighting on rage and 1 weighting on intimidate, but put a max of 1. And then I put like a 0.5 rating on life, fortify, and fire res. And then I just set the minimum to like 4 with these notables selected and see what I get. There are a couple combos that will change your pathing through here. Like, for example, if you have a good point here, you don't want to come over here to cross over. You want to go down and over, and then instead of taking these points, you take these points because they're better. But they're only better if you have, like, a 5% strength point here, which the best Lethal Pride combos do, but this one doesn't. So that's why you'll see a different pathing here on the split personality path. I come up here because I don't have anything down here. But if I go down to, like, the Planet Eater POV, you'll notice he's got the best in slot Lethal Pride, so I have 5% double damage here. And I'm doing Sublime for Rakiata, so I have to go down here anyways. So that's why the pathing's different. It's kind of equivalent whether you go here or here. It's basically the same. So the tiebreaker is just what you have on your Lethal Pride. If your Lethal Pride is more advantageous down here, you go down here. If there's nothing down here, you just go up here. It's fine. The last thing I'll talk about is, as far as raw clear, like I said, on really hard content, if you turn the dial up on difficulty, this build will always get faster than everything else. If a build clears faster than this, it is only because the content doesn't have enough HP. If you turn up the damage and defense of the monsters, eventually this build will get faster, period. But, that being said, especially a high budget, there are builds that get better screen clear than this. I have not played this, but I've been kind of hypothesizing this so far. But people do play strength stack Alberons on KB. And KB notoriously has bad single target. It is a little awkward because you would still want to use Crown of Ice for this setup as opposed to a different helmet and, just relying on the wand skill percent spell damage conversion. But I think you could pull off an interesting setup for clear speed where you use like weapon swap with Leap Slam and Zenith for like movement on an open area and single target, and then have another weapon swap with just like wand with like KB, and then you just get like the Giga clear speed, and then you just swap to Zenith for single target. Like I think that totally works. All the scaling's the same. All the Zenith gems are in the weapon itself, so it doesn't even matter if like you're not losing sockets to having this. The only thing awkward is you have to still use Crown of Eyes, but there are a couple wand skills that don't get the spell damage mod either, so it would like help them. But you could do a hybrid wand Zenith setup if you want to try to like squeeze out more clear speed in the end game. That's a possibility, but I haven't played that. I've just been thinking about it. But that's it for the actual build. Starting at this point in time, everything I talk about is crafting related. So, about 2/3 of these are the same as the previous video, but I'm just going to do them again here. That way it's all in the same video. This will all be timestamped, so you can skip around. But about 1/3 of them have changed. So, I'll hopefully have the most up-to-date method on everything. So, without further ado, let's go through the list. First up, we have the cheap-ass Ellie sword. Honestly, it's probably easiest to just buy these and just filter by Ellie DPS on a Reaver sword. Because, once again, I recommend probably re-rolling after this point and playing a different starter if you're trying to be optimal. But if you just like the idea of playing Zenith right away and you want to re-roll instantly like I do, you can just search for an Ellie sword on the trade site that has like 800 plus Ellie DPS. They can roll like 1300 and still only be like 1 or 2 div. So like that's an option. Otherwise, you can just essence this for flat until you get like 2, maybe 3 Ellie rolls, and then an open suffix to craft attack speed. So that's pretty straightforward. The next step up in the sword, though, you go to the higher budget. We're going to get to the Fire Stack sword. This is when you'll go from being like a turbo dumpster. This is, from just like a complete dumpster to like you actually get a little bit of damage now. Because like, this is like effectively a 1500 DPS sword. Usually when I swap to this sword, I'm going from like a 5-link Ellie sword to like a 6-link one of these, and I jump from like 2 mil DPS to like 8 mil, and suddenly the game feels easy. So this is like the first point in the game you feel powerful, but this one's pretty straightforward. You're going to Awakener Orb, a Elder, and a Shaper sword. Only one of them has to be a Reaver, the other one can be any. So if it's possible to buy them, just buy them. But generally, the Reaver sword might get bought out from other people crafting this. So you might have to buy a Reaver sword that's any influence, and then harvest reroll it to either Shaper or Elder, and then alt spam whichever mod that you land on. And then the other mod, since it can be any 2-hand sword, you can probably buy for much cheaper than you can craft it. So you're going to do Elder, Endurance Charge on melee stun, and then Shaper, fire damage per strength. You're going to Awaken Orb these two together, and you're basically going to take whatever you get. In this one, I lucked out and hit Ellie Pen, but you're probably going to get a dead prefix. That's totally fine. It doesn't really matter. It's negligible compared to the fire stack damage. But if you get an open prefix, you can just kind of slam. It's whatever. You only care about the 2 mods, fire stack and endurance charge and melee stun. And then ideally you hit an open suffix. That way you can craft attack speed. Because you can craft up to 20% attack speed, which is obviously just 20% more damage and, good for leap slam. So the only noteworthy thing on this, I would say, this has the giga low tier fire mod from 325. Whoops. This is probably the first sword that you're going to 6-link. It's almost certainly not worth like using fusings on the other unless you just buy a Reaver sword that's already 6-linked for like 15 chaos, and then just like essence it. Maybe that's a good argument for essencing your own, is if you can buy the 6-link already. But the only thing I'll say on this last is try to get the flat damage per strength divined correctly. I know at this point in time that seems like a big ask at this budget, but the difference in 2 to 4 going to 3 to 5 is 33% more damage. So that's a big deal for, you know, a couple divine orbs. I would say if you land on 2 to 5 or 3 to 4, that's an okay settle. But if you're on 2 to 4, it is definitely worth using a divine orb to try to hit like a higher roll, because every bit of flat is a large percent damage increase. So try to get a good divine on this. Next up, we have the non-influence Chaos Sword. There's 2 methods for the Chaos Sword, but essentially this is at the point in the build where you've got replica Alberons, and you're looking to get a different sword. The reason you can't use the same sword is because replica Alberons have a modifier that say cannot deal non-chaos damage. So that strength stack fire damage sword that you had before doesn't work anymore. So you need a different sword. You still like the endurance charge or melee stun if you go influence, but there's a non-influence sword. I'll go over both methods. The non-influence sword takes fractured spell damage. This is a hard base to get. Like, if fracture orbs are like 6 divines, that means you're going to spend 24 div on a base. You can try to get it to a 50-50 if you basically spell damage essence for like attack speed or strength. That's probably the best way to do it, because you can still craft on a fractured attack speed or fractured strength sword. They will sell. Other people will buy them. So maybe go for the 50-50 since WoW essence is relatively cheap. But if you hit fractured spell damage, that's the expensive part. The rest is fairly deterministic. You can zeal essence until you get strength, and try to get it to a point where you just have strength, attack speed, and fractured spell damage. Then you multi-mod, suffixes can't be changed, and reforge chaos. This will guarantee, this could fill prefixes, but this is guaranteed to get flat chaos damage. Because it's not influenced. There's an influence chaos mod, but the non-influence sword can only roll flat chaos damage. Then you suffix can't be changed again, and then you have a 50-50 veil. Early league, veils are pretty cheap, so this is fine. But later in the league, veils get pretty expensive, so this step starts to become a little less popular. But you basically have a 50-50 prefix to get chaos pen. And if you miss 50-50, you have to redo and get the flat chaos again. It is a guaranteed chaos pen and veil, though, if you do hit the 50-50. That's like the main argument for this method. It can only roll chaos pen. And then you finish with an open suffix, because your last suffix was multi-mod that you've been using as a placeholder. And then you can craft 30% double damage while focus. So that's how you do the non-influence sword. It's a more deterministic craft. It's maybe not as good if veiled orbs get really expensive. But I opted for the influence craft. The way you do this is similar to the first one, but instead of using the fire stack mod, you're using endurance charge or melee stun, because, you know, you're a jug. You have like 7 to 10 endurance charges, so this is like a 30 or 40% more damage mod. 20% more attack speed for socketed skills. So you're Shaper Elder, but now a different Shaper mod. And then there's going to be different budget iterations of this. So the cheapest budget iteration is you awaken orb these two together. You get whatever prefix. It might be a dead prefix. That's like the most common outcome. And then you lock prefix and reforge attack speed. And then you craft double damage focus. That's like the ideal. If you do hit an open prefix, or if you want to invest more money and more attempts in this to get a better sword, the next step up would be you try to annul the prefix or land the Awakener Orb with an open prefix, so that you only have the 2 prefixes as the 2 endurance mod, or as the 2 influence mods. After that, you have a couple options. You could reforge chaos. It's not guaranteed to hit the flat chaos damage like this one did. Or you could veiled orb. I think the veiled orb is safer, but you basically clean it. You could fill suffix and try to get it so that veiled orb. No, you can't guarantee add prefix. Basically, this version, you can use the much cheaper Veiled Chaos on this step too, if you clean it down to just these two mods. Because you can lock Prefix and Veiled Chaos and hope you don't fill Suffix and hope that the Veil mod hits a Prefix. So this could take several attempts. But if you do that, you have a very high chance of hitting Chaos Pen as your third Prefix. And if you hit 16 Chaos Pen, you can go on to the Suffix and just reforge speed a couple times until you hit like T1 or 2 attack speed. And then there's no more multi-mod recombinate, so you can't really deterministically get like a 5 or 6 mod sword anymore. But if you hit a good attack speed roll, I would basically just use the new Perfect Exalt to like blind slam a Suffix and hope you hit like a good influence mod or strength or like accuracy or something, and then just craft double damage focus. The other method you can do here is you can actually just take a multi-mod sword, since we can't really deterministically get a like a 6 mod sword anymore with no multi-mod recombinate anymore. One of the options you can do is if you get it cleaned down to endurance charge on melee stun and 20% more attack speed, you could either go for a Veiled Exalt and just take whatever mod you get, Prefix or Suffix, or you could lock Prefix and try to get a speed mod with a reforged speed, but then you'd have to annul, so that's probably a little hard. It's probably a Veiled angle. But yeah, you can lock Prefix and Veiled Exalt and just take whatever you get. Then you'll have the 2 influence mods, the Veiled mod, and then 3 open modifiers, and then you just multi-mod. So if you hit a Veiled Prefix, obviously you want Chaos Pen, but if you hit spell damage and gain his extra Chaos hybrid, that's also good. If you gain the other spell damage, which I don't even know if this is native on swords, you can craft it on swords, but I forget if this is a possibility, but either Chaos Pen is the one you want, and if it can roll spell damage, that's also acceptable Prefix. But then you're going to have if the Veil hits Suffix, what you want is an attack speed mod, or double damage focus, or just double damage. Any of those 3, you craft multi-mod, you craft 13 Chaos Pen as the Prefix, and then you craft the missing mod as the Suffix. So if you hit attack speed, you multi-mod, Chaos Pen, double damage focus. If you hit double damage focus, you multi-mod, Chaos Pen, attack speed. So this is probably the overall safest method, is getting it 2 mod, just blind Veiled Exalt with lock Prefix, and then multi-modding. And then you get a 5 mod sword. Because like the crafted Chaos Pen is 13, the Veiled is 16, it's pretty close. Crafted attack speed's 20 versus T1's 27. Not as close, but kind of close. So this method, I think, is only going to be about a 20 Divine Sword, because it's going to maybe be a couple Awakener Orb attempts with annuls, and then 1 Veiled Exalt, and then 2 Div on multi-mod. So I think you can craft this for under 20, with multi-mod, 2 crafted mods, 1 Veiled mod, Endurance Charge or Melee Stun, 20% more attack speed. That is what I'd go for as like the baseline. Anything better than that is going to be 10 times more expensive for a marginal increase. That is probably the safest sword craft. The more expensive sword I'll go over is the original Sin Sword. So the original Sin Sword, do I have that in this POB? I have the Synth Sword in this POB. The original Sin Sword is the same, except you need the Strength Stack mod. So this is going to be expensive, but it's going to be cheaper than an original Sin. So essentially it's the same thing, but you have to do 2 mod Awakener Orb with 2 Prefix that are just the 2 Awakener Orb mods, and you have to 1 and 3 recombinate it into a triple Prefix sword that has Endurance Charge on melee stun, fire damage per strength, and 20% more damage. So you do 2 out of 3, 2 out of 3, get them clean, no other Prefix, and then you don't really care what the suffixes are because you just need to hit an open suffix. And then it's a 1 and 3 recombinate until you hit the triple influence Prefix. Then you're going to reforge speed. It's 1 and 7 hit T1, but T1 or 2 is probably acceptable. And then 50-50 Veil, and then finish on craft. That's like the Osin sword that's like basically mirrored here. So if you hit the top attack speed and you unveil, like I said, either double damage or double damage focus, then you just finish on craft. You can finish on like crafted hybrid strength if you hit double damage focus, but it's probably there's like 10 combinations that are like pretty similar between veiled mod, crafted mod, like which way you go. But someone will most likely make a mirror sword that's slightly better than that. That has the +1 endurance charge with the veiled 40% double damage. That was the mirror sword last league. I expect that to be the mirror sword again this league. Yeah, that's not changing at all. It'll be attack speed +1 endurance. It'll probably be Zeal attack speed for 30% with +1 endurance and 40% double damage with the triple prefix. That'll be the mirror sword. Someone will make one, don't worry. All right. Up next, rings. So, this build, I used to recommend doing a hunter ring, where you would craft a cogwork, and then reforge life, and then finish on a hunter slam. I've kind of fallen out of popularity with this, because it's a 22% slam, and it bricks the ring, so if the prices are bad, people don't like doing this. People don't like spending 10 divines crafting a ring, and then missing a 22% slam. So I've kind of edged away from this, and I now recommend getting your life on hit either from a Vitality Watcher's Eye, or you can do these 5 points for Insta-Leech. It's 18% attack speed too, and guess what? Zenith and Leap Slam both like 18% attack speed. So this is a good option if you don't want to have to get life on hit on your ring. So that makes the ring crafting way more straightforward. Basically, you're either going to get a cogwork or a helical. I'll start with the cogwork. They're very similar. And you are going to... Alright, this guy's whispered me. We're gonna get out of here. Alright. You're going to get a cogwork ring. And you're going to rage essence. You're going to rage essence until you hit, like, 2 good resistances. And an open prefix. This might take 50 or 100 rage essence, depending how picky you are. In this case, I hit tier 3 fire res and tier... No, it's not even tier 3. It's tier 4 fire res because of the cogwork multiplier. I hit tier 4 fire res with tier 1 all res. And then I had an open prefix. And then you lock suffix reforge chaos. The only mod I can hit is chaos res. Generally, tier 3 or better is acceptable. Because you can, like, resistance catalyst. But tier 3 rolls up to 25. With cogwork, that's already, like, 30. And with, like, a res catalyst that's, like, 30-something chaos res, like, that's good enough. But so basically the reforge chaos is a 50-50. So on this one, I rage essenced into all res fire res. I did hit T1 on the reforge, and then I qualitied this up. After that, it doesn't matter what your prefixes are as long as they're not full. You need to have 1 open prefix out of 2. You then go again, you lock suffix, which you're now full on suffix, and you reforge life. If you're not influenced, you can do a remove add life if you have good suffixes, but it's safer. But as I was saying earlier, on this ring, I recommend you start with a warlord ring, which means you can't remove add because that craft is influence restricted. So I would blind warlord slam a ring, a cogwork, or a helical. Then I would strength essence for like 2 res. Then reforge chaos, and if you hit a good chaos res, then you're going to reforge life and hopefully not fill. I don't know the odds on cogwork or helical because they get weird in Craft of Exile. But ideally you hit like a top 4 life roll, call it like a 40%, and then you craft -7. Helical is the same way, but it's more cursed because you only have 1 prefix, so it's easier to fill. So you can either end on a crafted -7, you could end on a veil, or you can end on a reforged life. But you're gonna have to hit the helical with an annul. Basically, you're gonna rage essence into a ring that has like 2 good res, the essence strength, and like a garbage prefix. You're gonna have to 1 and 4 annul the prefix, lock suffix, reforge chaos, hit the 50-50 on like tier 3+. Then if you hit a good prefix on a random mod, like a random life roll, that's acceptable. Just end it there. If you hit a garbage prefix, you will have to 1 in 5 annul here. So for this reason, you can generally get a cogwork for like 5 to 10 div. But helical, even ignoring the cost of the base, could easily be a 30 to 50 div craft, maybe even more, depending how picky you are. So I generally like to be cheap and go for cogwork because it's worse than a helical, but not by that much, and it's a much easier craft. So that's why even on the 500 div POB, I'm using a cogwork still, because it's an easy warlord item for your Bound by Destiny, and it's close to helical stats without spending 100 div. Next up, we have the Synth Ami. I'll do Synth Ami and I'll roll this into simplex, but Synth Ami, very simple. You buy 18 strength Ami. These bases are going to be several divines because other people are going to try to buy them. And you're going to rage essence into tier 2 all attributes. You can't roll tier 1 because that's item level 85. And almost no synth items in the game are generated at higher than item level 83. Unless they like drop off Cortex or they're like manually benched into synth. So virtually every synth aim is going to be 83, so that means the top attribute roll is going to be tier 2. You want to rage essence into tier 2 and then hit like any other useful suffix. It could be int, like I hit here. It could be a resistance, whatever. And then open suffix, reforge life, probably hit one other dead prefix that doesn't really matter. If you hit a good prefix, great. And then craft -7. As far as amulet options, if these get bought up and are really expensive, Great Wolf is an okay option if you get percent attributes and one other useful stat. There's several 2-mod Great Wolf combos that are oftentimes under 10 divines. You can hit a good attributes roll like 30 plus or 28 plus. You can hit PDR. Spell damage works because of Crown of Eyes. You can hit damage shift and it's okay if you're running Arctic armor and it's shift to fire. You can hit percent life. That's very good. You can hit percent damage, percent attack damage, percent fire damage if you're fire. I don't even know if there's a chaos one, but basically there's like 7 to 10 combos of 2-mod Great Wolves with percent attributes that are fairly comparable to the Synth Ami. So look for those if these get expensive. Finally, for the amulet slot, we have the Great Wolf, or we have the simplex. They changed simplex this league. You can no longer do the bench craft trick to turn them into a magic item with an influence mod. So you can no longer do the beast lock method to craft simplexes easily. That's going to make them more expensive, and the imp mod is going to get worse to hit, but the strength mod is even more cursed. So since most leagues, these float between 0.6 and 0.8 mirrors, they're going to be really hard to craft now, because you have to get a simplex from Heist that's white, transmute it into a no-mod magic item, because the way the item works, it will make it have no mods as magic if you transmute it. Then you have to imprint the no mod magic item, so you have the imprint copy. Then you have to regal it and turn it into an influence with a Conqueror's Orb, and then re-roll it until you hit the Awakener Orb mod you want. Then you have to Awakener Orb it with the other amulet. Then you have to hit the 1 in 3 annul. Then you have to reforge influence 1 in 23. That's like a 500 divine craft. It's incredibly cursed. So if you're running to maybe get like a few early league mirror copies, maybe craft your own. But generally, since these sell for like 0.8 mirrors anyways, my recommendation is just it's too cursed. Don't worry about it. Just accept the fact that it's a mirror now. The good news is it's not going to be some hyper-exclusive mirror item that someone can charge a fee for. There's going to be enough people that have their own crafted copy that the fee, if there is one, will either be like 10 divines or it'll be like Settler's Shop has no fee. So you won't really have to... It's not like it's a 1.2 mirror item. It'll be like a 1.01 mirror item instead of like 0.8 like it was last league. Alright, belt, pretty similar. You're going to look for percent strength. You can use a Cyclopean Coil as like a starter, but if you can get a percent strength belt, it's pretty similar story. You're going to Rage Essence until you hit really any decent res. There's a couple ways to do this, but I like to go Rage Essence until like either tier 1 Chaos or maybe Fire. But let's say you hit like tier 1 Fire with Rage Essence. If you can get it annulled clean into just being... This prefixes don't matter, but if you can get 2 suffixes with Rage Essence and like a Fire Res, then you can reforge Chaos. The other thing you can do that isn't really a real option, it sounds like a real option, but Belt Strength technically rolls to 80. So you could end the Essence and then hit 60 Strength, but for the reason I was describing on Amulet, synth items just aren't generated at item level 86, and Godslayer is level 86. So virtually any synth belt you buy is going to be 83, so you can't roll Godslayer. So that's why I like to go for the Rage Essence instead of the Chaos Essence. But either or does work. And then in that case, you would reforge either Fire, Cold, Lightning, whatever res you need. Whatever, you can reforge the res in this game anyway, so it doesn't matter. Then once you have triple suffix, I generally do a couple Bristle Matron reforge lives. And then I do a 50-50 lock suffix Veiled Exalt. And then I generally finish on a crafted, like, hybrid. So that's not how this belt craft played out. But if I would have hit triple suffix, I would have reforged life, gone for 50-50 Veil, and then crafted the other Veiled mod. Like, there's a couple Veiled belt prefixes, so you can hit one of them with, like, you basically just craft the remaining one that you don't hit with the Veiled. And if nothing else, you can craft mana, because that's not terrible. Because at turbo high attack speed sometimes people with just basic leech with no mana gain on hit are actually barely outspending their 20% leech. And just having a little bit extra mana ups their maximum leech, because leech rate's based off max mana. So sometimes a mana craft is okay. The little bit of tech you can do to fix that is you can sometimes get a jewel that has gain 1 mana on hit as a synth mod. I don't know where I have it on this one, but I have it on one. This one, yeah, this one. This is the cheat code, since Zenith does so many hits that you like never have mana problems. So I was gonna slip this in here. It doesn't have to be a cluster jewel. You could just buy a jewel that has like synth 1 mana on hit, and then just like use a bunch of red juice on the harvest bench, reforge life until you get like a passable jewel with strength and life, and that will solve all your mana problems. But I'm just gonna throw that out there because mana can sometimes be needed to match your spend. It's like they're like tied depending on if you have like how many -7s you have crafted. All right, next up, gloves. So I talked earlier about why you use Warlock gloves. These are Legion gloves, but this character has proper Warlock gloves. And the reason is simple. Dang, Zen Wallace is like 15 mirrors and he has lesser strength damage. Oh man, I'm slacking, holy. Okay, anyways, Warlock gloves are good just because you're not really crafting prefixes for defense. So you're almost going to get no stats on the defenses anyways. So it's basically the difference between do I want 100 energy shield or 300 armor. And especially if you're still Iron Fortress, that 100 energy shield can make a difference for Divine Shield. So I like to go on Warlock gloves. That does mean they can't naturally roll strength. So that does mean for strength you have to essence. The easiest way to craft gloves, for the most part, is Fractured Life. This is the easiest craft by far. Because if you have Fractured Life, like top 2 or 3 tiers, all you do is you Rage Essence until you hit like attack speed. And then you can reforge Chaos for Chaos Res. After that, you have a triple suffix. If you need different res, you can go for that. But I'm assuming you're going to end up with attack speed Chaos Res for like, you know, a pretty high budget setup. You have a Fractured Life and triple suffix. You're basically done. Because then all you do is you just blind Veiled Chaos. You don't even need to Veiled Exalt. You can use the cheap one. You Bristle Matron Veiled Chaos. Because if you fill, you can just Eldritch Annul and go again. And, you know, whatever Veil mod you hit, you can hit Hybrid Life, you can hit the Strike Range, and then you can hit the PDR while focused. Those are all good options. And if you hit one of those on the Veiled, I would probably end crafting either Hybrid Life or 74% Energy Shield if you're on Warlock. If you're not on Warlock, I'd craft Hybrid Life. If you're on Warlock, it would probably be better to end on 74% Energy Shield. But, yeah, you could actually just randomly hit, like, an ES mod and just skip to crafting the other ES, and that wouldn't be bad. Like, if you just finish your suffixes and you just happen to be on, like, T1 flat, you could just call it a day and craft 74% and end it there. But the strike range is decent. It's good quality of life. The melee gems tag does nothing. It's just 0.2 meter strike range. That also gets multiplied by Scions if you take Scions. But finally, it's going to come down to the Eldritch Implicits. Do the Eldritch Implicits last, because it's easy enough on this, and you might need the Eldritch Implicits on the crafting if you need to do prefixes after like a Veiled. But the biggest part on gloves is the Eldritch Implicits, because these two Eldritch Implicits are insanely good for Zenith. Obviously, +2 strike targets is really good. The way you hit this is you use cheap embers, and you just keep spamming them until you hit the 1 strike target mod. Let's say you're using graders, because grand is usually a big step up in price, but oftentimes lesser and greater are the same price, because for a lot of rolls they're the same. So let's say you're spending 2C just spamming graders, and you hit tier 2. What you're then going to do is you're going to buy Exceptional Ichor, and just put a random tier 4 on. So now you have a tier 2 strike target and a random tier 4. You're going to Conflict Orb, and it is more likely to hit the lower tier 1. So this isn't guaranteed, but it's going to be like 70-30 to go to tier 3. After, if you hit the tier 3, you're going to put another Exceptional Ichor on, now make it tier 4, tier 3. This one's going to be like 60-40, because they're closer together. If that one goes up to 4, the other one will go down to 3. Use a third Exceptional Ichor. Now they're both tier 4, and you just have a raw 50-50 on the Conflict Orb. And then tier 5, it goes from 1 strike target to 2 strike targets. After that, it's easy, because you just buy a bunch of cheap Ichors, and you just spam that until you get 3% damage per 100 strength. You can spend a shit ton to get double Exquisite. It's going to cost like several hundred divines for the extra 1% damage per 100 strength. But this character is like 10 mirrors, and I have the lesser, because tier 1 through tier 5 is tier 1 through tier 4 is the exact same. And in order to get double tier 5, you have to take the other mod up to tier 6 first, and then spend perfect Ichors until you hit the mod, and then win a 50-50 to get them both to tier 5. That's cursed. You can do that on high budget, but that's cursed. But yeah, the most important thing on this is generally the Eldritch Implicits. They're actually more important than the explicit mods. Alright. Chest. So, early game, you can go Iron Fortress. You can go Iron Fortress all the way into the end game. It's the more damage chest. If I switched to an Iron Fortress right now, my character would deal more damage than it does with this chest. However, you quickly get to the point where you kind of just have more damage than you need, and you'd rather have defense. And even though this doesn't give you block, the defense you can get from this chest is just so insane. Because the less damage taken per strength is just like 16% less damage taken all the time, or it's like 17% for me. I will say this, in 327, we don't know the fate yet of the Grasping Mail mods. So the Global Defenses mod might be gone. We don't know. I will say this, it doesn't matter that much. Like, it genuinely doesn't. It's not that big of a deal. Because this is your main source of ES anyways. So hybrid is like almost as good as this. Global Defenses is still better. But hybrid is not that much worse than Global Defenses. So the way I would normally craft a rare chest is I would try to get it above 20 quality base if possible. Maybe like 26 plus if you have the money. If not, just use a 20. It has to be item level 86 because the tier 1 defense mods are 86. I would try to fracture a suffix. There are 4 suffixes that are worthy of fracture. If you can get this to a 50-50, I recommend it if it's a higher quality base, because those are expensive. So the 4 acceptable suffixes are flat strength, the essence mod I have on this chest for less damage from crits per endurance charge, 35 chaos res depending on your chaos res situation, or 8 PDR. Of these, I think the best one is the essence mod, and the second best one is strength. Those are the 2 I would prefer. You're going to try to get one of those fractured as a suffix. Then, just like every other defense chest in the entire game, you're going to spam 1 socket dense fossils until you hit triple T1 prefix. Maybe I'm lucky, but this generally only takes me like 50 to 100 each league. Not that hard. Even if you fill suffixes, if you hit triple T1 prefix, because you have a fractured suffix, you can clean with Eldritch Implicit, with Eldritch Annul. And then it's easy. Because all you have to do, this is why strength or essence is better, is both chaos and PDR you can reforge. So because I have my prefixes locked in, and because I'm not scared of filling suffixes because I can Eldritch Annul, I am basically done now. You can't screw it up. Because if I had, say, fractured strength, if I want PDR more, I'm going to lock prefix, and then I'm going to reforge fizz, and it's a 1 in 5. If I want chaos res, I'm same thing, lock prefix, reforge chaos, 1 in 6 for T1. You could fill suffix and still eligible, so this could take several attempts, but you're going to end on your fractured suffix, either PDR or chaos res, and then crafted strength. Or crafted percent attributes. Because it's already comparable to 55 strength. That's not how this chest turned out. But 55 and 6% are basically identical. But you just end on open suffix and craft 6% attributes. So that's chest. Large cluster jewel. This is the single most broken OP large cluster jewel in the entire game. This is the only build I've ever seen where a regular 8 mod large cluster jewel beats a 1 passive voices. Because we're a 2-hand strength stacking build, and the front 2 nodes on this is 20 strength and 20 attack speed. And then, like, just even more attack speed and accuracy. This is equivalent to, like, 12% attack speed because of the accuracy with 20 attack damage. The way to craft this is actually pretty simple. You use a 3-socket resonator with shuddering, pristine, and dense fossil. If you do this on an item level 50 to 67 cluster, the odds of hitting these 3 mods is like 1 in 6 or 1 in 7. Very, very easy hit. If you do not get one in that item level range, because now that more people know about this, these are pretty expensive. The bases could go up to like 1 or 2 div pretty easily. The other option you can have, don't do 68 to 83. I've had personal experience where you can actually buy 84s for pretty cheap, and the T1 on all cluster jewel mods is 84. So if it's several divines for a 50 to 67, just spend 30 chaos and buy an 84. This does lower your odds drastically to like 1 in 13 or something. It's like 1 in 13 or 1 in 15. It's like 2 times harder to hit. The saving grace here, besides the base being cheaper, is you could hit a tier 1 suffix. Like in this case, I hit 8 strength. I'm not going to sell those Shaper's Touch for 2 exalts, sir. Oops. In this case, I hit perfect strength. This can be worth a lot of money, because while a normal vanilla suffix on a lower item level with these 3 stats will maybe sell for like 6 divines, later in the league, people will buy ones that have like 8 strength for like 50 div. Because they'll do their POB, they'll do the math, and they'll be like, yo, if I bought 8 strength on 3 cluster jewels, I gain 24 strength. And that's flat strength. I have so much percent strength, that's actually like 60 strength. Oh shit, I just gained 5% damage. And they'll do that math, and then they'll fork over 50 div for these. So the easiest way to do it is eye level 50 to 67, shuddering, dense, pristine. If those get expensive, you can send the Hail Mary on 84 plus. Do not waste fossils on 68 to 83. Lastly, small cluster jewel. I did do Wall of Muscle in 325 because in the 325 build used the reflected mist simplex, which has a lot of flat strength. But now that the end game is using a influenced simplex with 45% strength, that means the relative value of flat versus percent shifts. So percent isn't as valuable now. Flat is better. That means the preferred small cluster jewel is not Wall of Muscle anymore. It's just triple small. So these are better than Wall of Muscle now with the influence simplex. The way you craft these, this is actually one of the best use cases for the new perfect exalts they're adding this league, because most cluster crafts are just fossil spam on fundamental fossil until you get like 2 or 3 mods and then just end on a Hail Mary slam. I would say on this one, try to hit 3 modifiers, and you don't care about the life. The life is the least important by far. Try to hit 35 effect, strength all attributes. Not necessarily need T1. And then the least important one is the flat life. Don't spend 500 extra div on that. Just go for the 3 mod. That's like 90% of the stats. You can Divine Teardrop these, but it's really cursed. Like, I want you to know what you're getting into if you Divine Teardrop. Because you can craft these and hit, like, all 4 stats. Life, effect, strength, all attributes. And they're, like, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, tier 2. You can Divine Teardrop your way to victory, but it is so cursed. I don't recommend it. If you're going to Divine Teardrop, you need to fracture 14 strength. You need to. You then need to hit effect, attributes, and any life roll, and then teardrop until the attributes hit 6. And then it's a 50-50 if the effect is 35 or 25. If you hit that, and your life roll is tier 3, fantastic, you're done. Because to beat that, it's going to, on average, cost like more than a mirror. And someone this league will make a mirror small cluster jewel. So it's not worth your time risking teardropping it more and bricking an otherwise like 300 plus divine cluster jewel, trying to get an extra 5 life, because someone's just going to make a mirror one that you could have got for cheaper that's going to have 2 ES gain on hit, 5 strength, and 3% attack speed on it. So don't go for the quad T1. If you teardrop, fracture strength, and go for the triple T1. Ignore life. Get life on it before you teardrop, but whatever tier you land on, just take it. That's it for all the crafts. Okay, I did say this is going to be an hour, and I'm looking at the time, and I think I think we missed the hour mark. I think we're over an hour. That's Zenith for 325. That's not even 325. It's been a long video. That's Zenith for 327. We're in a state of the game right now where there was no bow buffs. There weren't really further casting buffs. It's been a melee league for 2 leagues now. It's looking to be a melee league for a 3rd league, potentially. And Zenith is the apex predator of all melee builds. So I hope you play it and enjoy it. I'll see you guys next time.